Earnings season continues, and today we take a look at Meta, one of the biggest spenders in the AI space in terms of CapEx. And in their upcoming earnings report, is it going to show that it's generated profits and is making an impact on this company's bottom line, or is it going to show wasted efforts? That is going to have a major impact on the price move of this stock. Let's take a look at the charts and see what's possible. All of that and more in today's Meta earnings preview. Let's go. Unravel seams, buy low, sell high. Meta, ticker symbol META. The artist formerly known as Facebook at the time that I'm recording this is trading at $673.18. And this is the earnings report that I am most excited about this earnings season. We do have so many big boys reporting tomorrow. Alongside Meta, you have Amazon, Microsoft, Google, who are going to be sharing their reports. And I'll have a separate video taking a look at all three of those. I'm not going to be doing individual takes, but I did want to spend some time going into Meta and talking about what is potentially possible here with this stock and what it can do upon its move. And one of the biggest things I'm focused on here when I take a look at Meta and talk about their company is the amount of money that they've invested in the AI space. And in this report, are we going to hear them talk about how it has increased profits for them? And investors, analysts combined are all going to be looking for that type of indication. And if we don't see that, then that is not only not going to be good for Meta, but also for the AI space. So there's a lot of focus on this report. And we also know that there's speculation around the release of their Llama number 4, the behemoth. It is the big one. It's supposed to be coming out here in 2026. We don't know when, but let's see if we get some update on that tomorrow in the report. But this company has spent over $100 billion on AI infrastructure. So they've got to put up or shut up tomorrow when they report. But let's take a look at where this thing is on the charts. I'm going to throw on my chart analysis glasses here to do a diagnosis of where we currently are. And you can see as we drill in here right now, the 200 simple moving average on the daily chart has been this point of resistance where it just not has been able to sustain a move higher. Now you can see that here on April 17th, it did get above it, but was then rejected down and has been just chopping down in below that 200 simple moving average for some time. Now notice this too, back off of its last earnings report, it did have a strong gap higher and it actually filled a gap from a gap down back in October, but then proceeded to just get sold off. That created a bit of an upper resistance trend line that I'm watching here right now that Meta is struggling to push through. So let's keep an eye on this. If it does push into this and does get rejected here throughout the day, again, we are below the 200. We're below that trend line right now. Or if it does shoot above this on the earnings report and it does drop back down, does this now serve as a bit of support? But it's interesting to keep an eye on this upper resistance trend line. And the other thing that I want to show you is if we just go back in time here to September of 2025 into October, a similar kind of pattern occurred here. We had this upper resistance trend line, and you could see what came out of this drop after it hit it the second time here. We fell about 23.6%. So if we get something like that down from the top of that trend line again, that would bring us down to the lows that Meta made on March 27th off of the war weakness. So just something to keep in mind. This thing is not guaranteed a bullish move higher. In fact, there are more things that say that this one can continue lower than move higher, but anything can happen on an earnings report. We know that. And the other thing to take a look at, we had this big drop that occurred in the month of March. A lot of this was tied to the lawsuits against Meta for negative impacts of social media on children. And you can see that this thing got down to a low of about $520.70, which if you go back to last year's tariff weakness, That is still higher than the lows that were put in last year. And in fact, if you go back to April 21st of last year, you could see that this thing made a low of 480.32. And what we want to keep an eye on is there is an unfilled gap right here at 507.13 if it does in fact get smacked back down here. Now, there are a few other unfilled gaps down below before this thing started its tear higher, along with everything else here in recent weeks. We have this gap here at 539.34. We have another gap here from April 7th at 634.71. And then the most recent gap we have is from April 13th, and that is at 649.56. So there are several areas of interest that could serve as magnets if Meta's report is negative, if there is not an indication of major profits coming from their CapEx spend, if they do not have good forward guidance. So we just want to pay attention to that. And in terms of supports to the downside, we can see that we do have the 10-day exponential moving average right here at 665.27. And then you also have your 100 daily simple moving average at 651.86, followed by your 50 right here at 631.08. So there are quite a few supports here that should catch this thing if it does fall. But remember, when it comes to earnings, negative catalysts can just slice through strong moving averages like a hot knife through butter. And some bears out there might say, all right, you have that upper resistance trend line. You also have a higher high, lower high, double top with that neckline right around 653.46. And if it would take that out, then yes, these gaps below would get filled. Again, just looking at the technicals right here, it does look a bit sketchy. It is going to take a strong report in order for this one to move. It definitely can do that because Meta has a history of pushing hard and high off of its earnings reports, but whether or not it does that, we don't know. And take into account that today, the time that I'm recording this here on Tuesday, April 28th, there is some weakness impacting the tech space right now because of concerns that AI did not reach their user goals, their profit goals, and that is pressuring some tickers to the downside. Let's see if that carries over into the report and if there's escalation between the United States and Iran. And also tomorrow we have the Fed meeting, so it could just be a collision of all these factors that could set Meta up to fail, create a negative environment to where no matter what they report, they're going to go down. So really all the mag big boys, if this negativity persists, it's going to be hard for them to break out unless they just have an amazing report. Now, let's take a look to the upside. Right now, we do not have any unfilled gaps to the upside. This gap that was filled from October 29th off of the last earnings report was the last unfilled gap to the upside. So that has been taken out. And if this thing really wants to push, you do have the all-time high up here at 796.33, which is quite a ways away. But again, Meta, as I will show you here on some of their previous reports, can move like an animal. Let's just take a look here at those few earnings reports here. This one's from January 28th. We're going to measure from the close to the high of that candle here. And this thing jumped $73.22, almost 11%. This report, again, January 28th. So we're just going to mark this and give a win to the bulls here. But you could see that strength did not hold and right down it went after that pop higher. If we come back over here to October 29th, we had another big move to the downside. You can see here where Meta closed. You could see this drop again. Meta has massive moves off of their earnings reports. $102, 13.57%, were then dripped lower, created this double bottom pattern before it gapped up on that earnings report. We're going to give a win for the bear. So 1-1 here over the last two earnings reports. It's even neck and neck. Let's just keep going back. But again, the characteristic that I want you to see are big major moves that Meta gives whenever it reports earnings. If we come over here to July and we measure out from the low, you could see that this thing was down into the 50-day simple moving average. If we take that low, measure it out to the high, again, another massive move, 12.79%, $88.99. Again, Meta moves hard when it gets going. And that took it up to near all-time highs. In fact, all-time highs followed shortly after that. This is a win for the Bulls. So out of the last 3 earnings reports, 2 wins by the Bulls, 1 from the Bears. And then let's just go back one more. And this was last April, again, coming off of all of that tariff weakness. And we got a bang gap up here, $43.05, which is still large, but compared to the moves from Meta, it's not as significant. But this was a 7.83% gap up. We're going to mark this as a win for the Bulls. And we could see here, we could see that the Bulls, out of the last 4 reports, have pushed this stock higher. They have dominated. And it was just the report from October after this thing had been pushing massively that it dropped. And the question is, can the Bulls continue to drive this thing up? And it has corrected quite a bit. It actually did hit bear territory after it hit that all-time high. If we measure that out down to the low here, 34.66%, $276.14. So it did have a nice correction. The question is, there still more downside to come? Now, here's the one thing that I want to point out here. And this was first identified by Scott in the Curse community. So shout out to Scott here. This pattern is still in place, and we are looking at the weekly here. And you could see you do have this head and shoulders pattern. That is textbook. Let's see if it wants to break down. You have those upper resistance trend lines. So there is concern here if you are a bull as to whether or not this thing can gap up. And here's the thing with earnings. A company can report amazing results, great forward guidance, and it doesn't matter. The market can still gap it down. And the reverse is true as well. The company could report horrible earnings and they could gap it higher. Earnings are dangerous to trade. You want to wait until the move comes before you actually take the trade, let it settle out. But the one thing for certain tomorrow, we are going to get a significant move. Anywhere from $40 to $100, this thing is going to smash up, and it should provide some great opportunities in the days that follow for some day trades. And again, there is structure here that says that this thing looks like it is set up to move lower. However, coming off of that 30% decline from all-time highs, it could be ready to get back into the mix and participate in this rally. We just have to wait to see how they report. And again, the main thing, I'll reiterate it here, is the investment into AI impacting their bottom line. That's going to be the biggest thing. That's what we want to pay attention to and listen to if there's any indication there, and that will drive it higher. What is my take? What do I see happening here with Meta? Again, I do think there's opportunity for this thing to get moving higher, but it's so hard to ignore all of the bearish technicals here with the upper resistance trend lines, with the bearish head and shoulders pattern. And I'm going to lean more towards a move lower here. But to the benefit of Meta, you do have unfilled gaps. You do have lots of moving averages below that can catch this thing if it does start to drop. So it should not be a precipitous collapse to the downside. But as of right now, with that double top into that resistance, it looks like it wants to come lower. And I'll be watching to see, can it come down here to the 50-day simple moving average at what are we at there? 631.01. Will that be a bouncing spot? That wouldn't be too huge of a move to the downside. Does it come a little bit lower than that? And if it shoots through that 50, then it definitely can come down and fill that next gap at 575.45. If things are not solid in the report, and if the weakness continues with the pressures to the downside on the AI tickers, and if things escalate between the United States and Iran. So there you have it, my take on Meta earnings. Let me know in the comments below, is Meta more prone to a downside move based off the bear structure that we see on the chart, or is this thing set up to explode higher off of solid numbers that come out of the report? please put that in the comments below. If you haven't done so already, please smash that subscribe button for more content just like this. More earnings previews coming up for the rest of this quarter. There's so much more to go. As always, I appreciate your support. Make it a great day, on in the moment, and most importantly, be grateful. Take care, everyone. The clock ticks